A fool speaks to show what he knows. A master listens to discover what is hidden. The loudest sound in the room is not the voice, but the silence of a man who understands. Have you ever stopped to observe the dynamics of a common conversation? Most men operate on autopilot, throwing words into the wind in a desperate hope to impress, without realizing that true communication is not about what you say, but about the space you open for the other person to enter. There are questions that transcend the simple exchange of information. They are not just phrases, they are master keys. Old and rusty keys from disuse, but still capable of unlocking heavy emotional gates. Barriers that most men do not even imagine exist in the female psyche, because they are too busy listening to their own voice. When a man decides to master the subtle and dangerous art of asking, he ceases to be a passive participant and becomes the architect of the interaction. He is not just conducting a banal conversation about the weather or work. He is guiding a woman into herself, gently forcing her to navigate through regions where raw emotion, dormant memory, and repressed desire mix uncontrollably. It is exactly there, in that silent abyss at the heart of the mystery, that real attraction is born. I do not refer to that superficial attraction based on appearance or financial status, which is fragile and fleeting, but I refer to the one that holds the breath, the one that maddens the senses, the one that makes a woman think of you obsessively when the whole world around her falls silent and she is alone with her thoughts. The great flaw of the majority, the fatal error committed by 90% of the male population, is trying to impress by speaking, displaying feathers like an insecure peacock, while the true seducers, those who leave indelible marks, impress by asking. A good question operates psychologically like an enchanted mirror. It reflects the woman's soul back to herself, but with a clarity she has never seen, making her feel, perhaps for the first time in years, that she has never really been heard or seen with such depth before. That is why when a man asks the right questions with the right tonality and at the precise moment, she disarms almost instantly. Visualize this happening. Her heart, which was once a fortress surrounded by high walls built by past disappointments and social defenses, begins to creak and open. The logical barriers dissolve like mist in the sun, and the game changes completely. But you must be wondering, what exactly are these questions? What kind of question possesses the semantic architecture necessary to awaken deep emotions, provoke dormant imagination, and create a connection that she cannot explain logically to her friends the next day? The brutal truth is that it is not just about the words themselves, although they are important, but about the visceral energy behind them, the silent and predatory intention that inhabits your gaze while you wait for the answer, the tone of your voice that must drop an octave, and the deliberate pause before the response. A man who understands this dynamic dominates the invisible rhythm of the conversation. He becomes the conductor of time. He does not speak in a hurry. He does not have the anxiety to fill the silence. He does not try to prove anything to anyone. His objective is surgical. He makes the woman feel. And to begin this emotional dissection, the first question, perhaps the most powerful of all, to break the ice of superficiality, is the one that touches on the ego and the human need for validation, touching on what she never dares to say out loud. Imagine the scenario. The noise around diminishes. You face her and ask, "What is it that no one has ever noticed about you, but that you would like them to notice?" Observe her microfacial reaction. Something changes in the air. The atmosphere becomes denser. It is as if a secret door opened inside her, a door that leads to the basement where she keeps her true identity. No one has ever asked this for real, because everyone is too busy looking at the exterior. And when she stops to think to answer, she is forced to dive into memories, into pains of not being seen, into unspoken desires for recognition. At that exact moment, you cease to be just another man in her contact list and become an ethereal presence, a persistent echo inside her mind. Deepening this connection, there is another question that transforms the conversation into something magnetic, almost gravitational. What do you miss the most, but never admit? This question lights a silent fire because it is multifaceted. It touches the ego by suggesting that she is too strong to admit weaknesses. It touches the past by evoking nostalgia, and touches the heart at the same time. It makes her reveal vulnerabilities that she rarely shows, perhaps not even to herself. It is at this time that the game changes drastically, because the common man runs from vulnerability. He feels uncomfortable with real emotion, while the man who understands the female psyche knows that it is there, in the sacred space of confession and the held-back tear, that the indissoluble bond is born. The secret, which few understand, is realizing that women do not fall in love with logical answers or impressive resumes. They fall in love with sensations, with spikes of dopamine and oxytocin. Each right question is, therefore, an invitation to feel. You do not need to be the most handsome in the room, nor the richest or most famous. You need to be genuinely curious, almost like an investigator of souls. You need to make her feel discovered, like a work of art that was covered in dust. The female mind feeds on mystery, but it also has an insatiable hunger for connection. And when you awaken both at the same time, when she feels that you understand her deeply and, paradoxically, feels that she cannot decipher you totally, you become an equation impossible to forget. Let's go to a practical example of emotional anchoring. Ask, what was the craziest thing you have ever done for love? This question seems innocent, almost cliché, but it is a temporal trap. It transports the woman instantly to a story of high intensity. And remember, every woman is moved by stories and narratives. Upon answering, she begins to relive visceral emotions, the uncontrolled laughter, the sharp pain, the longing, the adrenaline, and without realizing it, her brain associates these intense sensations with you, who is there in front of her now. Each answer creates an emotional bridge, and if you know how to walk across it with silence, empathy, and a firm gaze that does not deviate, she will allow you to enter sacred places where no other man has reached. There are men who try to conquer by premature physical touch, others by polished appearance. But those who really leave marks, the positive emotional scars, are those who know how to ask. Because the female mind is complex, like a labyrinth, and each question is a torch that illuminates a new corridor, revealing secrets hidden in the shadows. When she realizes that you are not just trying to take her to bed or conquer her like a trophy, but rather understand her as a complex human being, she surrenders in a way she cannot rationally control. And it is at this exact moment that madness is born. Not a pathological or destructive madness, but that soft obsession that makes her daydream in the middle of work, imagining what else you could discover in her, what secrets she has not yet told you. These questions are not mere bar tricks. They are dimensional portals. They are bridges between the logical rational and the chaotic emotional. They are surgical ways to open someone's soul with respect, with absolute presence, with intensity. Because in the end, what drives a woman crazy is not the man who speaks beautifully with difficult words. It is the man who makes her feel alive, pulsating. A woman goes crazy for a man who makes her think, who challenges her emotionally to leave the comfort zone and awakens in her the urgent desire to reveal herself. Seduction is not in saying you are beautiful. She has heard that 1,000 times. Seduction is in asking, what makes you feel really alive? This question is like an ancient spell. It forces her to leave the autopilot of routine, forces her to remember moments of intensity, of overwhelming passion, of unrestricted freedom. And in that instant, upon relating these memories, she feels alive again, and by a process of psychological transfer, associates this sensation of vitality with you. The secret is simple, but difficult to execute. Women do not want ready-made answers. They want to be deciphered like a complex code. Another question that touches deep and pierces the armor is, what scares you most about falling in love? This phrase pierces social defenses because every woman has fear. Fear of losing herself, of surrendering and not being reciprocated, of repeating the pain of past relationships. When she answers this, she is not just talking. She is inviting you inside her labyrinth of fears. If you listen with full attention, without interrupting to give unsolicited advice, without wanting to correct her feelings, without trying to seem wise, she realizes she can trust. And trust, my friend, is the shortest and most direct path to true attraction. Questions like this create a palpable emotional tension. They are like invisible threads that connect your solar plexus to hers. She begins to feel something she doesn't understand, a strange familiarity, because you are not competing with other men who talk about cars or money. You are playing on another field, a field where you are the only player. The others want to impress her ego. You want to understand her soul. And this is the critical point where she disarms, not because you dominate her by force, but because you make her feel safe enough to be who she is with all her imperfections. But one must know how to ask. The technique is fundamental. The tone of voice, the strategic use of silence, the intensity of the gaze. All of this is part of the hidden language of seduction. When you ask something deep and then fall silent, looking into her eyes, a vacuum is created, an atmospheric pressure, and it is in this vacuum that desire is born. For nature abhors a vacuum. She feels an instinctive need to fill that silence with something, and in doing so, in the eagerness to connect, she hands over parts of herself that she rarely shows to anyone. The art is in not breaking the enchantment with jokes out of time or banal comments. There are also questions that awaken the playful and sensual side, breaking the seriousness without losing the depth. For example, if you could disappear for a day without anyone knowing, what would you do? This is a spark of freedom. It activates the imagination, invites her unconscious to play what if. She may laugh and give a silly answer, but inside she is creating an image, a fantasy of escape, and you are now part of that fantasy. The conversation transforms into a psychological game, and in this game, you are the architect of her imagination. Common men ask what she does for a living, what her profession is. Men who understand the feminine ask, what would you do if no one judged you? This question is devastating because every woman lives divided between what society expects her to be and what she would like to be in her wild essence. When you touch on this duality, you awaken the repressed fire. She feels understood, almost exposed, psychologically naked. And this mix of vulnerability and desire is what drives her crazy. But beware, an important warning. The right questions require true presence. If you use them as memorized tricks from an internet manual, she smells the inauthenticity. The feminine is highly instinctive and perceives falsity and cheap manipulation in seconds. The crucial difference between seductive charm and toxic manipulation lies in the intention. When you ask because you really want to discover who she is, and not just because you want to control the outcome of the night, the effect is magnetic and irresistible. She feels she is facing someone rare, and rarity, in the market of human relations, is the greatest aphrodisiac. Asking is dancing with the mystery. It is leading the dance without imposing the steps. It is leaving space for the other to reveal themselves while you observe with genuine fascination. Because what really drives a woman crazy is not the empty compliment about her dress, nor the calculated touch. It is the intoxicating sensation that someone sees her beyond the surface, that someone possesses X-ray eyes that pierce the body and reach the soul. Therefore, when asking questions, do not look for factual answers. Look for emotional reactions. Observe her gaze change, the pupil dilate, the smile appear slowly at the corner of the mouth, the body lean a little more in your direction. This is silent communication. It is non-verbal language screaming. It is the invisible field where attraction is built brick by brick. And when she starts sharing stories, never interrupt her. Every word of hers is a window to her inner world. Every memory is a treasure map. The man who listens is not passive. He is active in his receptivity. He is the patient hunter who observes the prey, the artist who draws with silence, the alchemist who transforms simple bar conversations into pure desire. Deep down, the right questions are not just tools of conquest, they are mirrors that show who you are too. Because while making her speak, you reveal yourself in the way you listen, in the security of not needing to talk about yourself all the time, in the way you react without judgment. That is where reciprocity is born. That is where the bond ceases to be a game of seduction and becomes real energy flowing between two bodies. And when this energy is established, when she feels that you understand her, but you still remain a mystery to her, her mind begins to work for you, even in your absence. Every hour away becomes curiosity. Every memory of the conversation becomes accumulated desire. And this is how a man enters and camps in a woman's head without saying another word.
There is something almost hypnotic about a man who knows how to conduct a conversation with this depth. He does not speak to be admired like a peacock. He speaks to create an atmosphere, a climate. And within that atmosphere, each question becomes an electric current that runs through her mind, awakening forgotten memories, hidden fears, and fantasies that were dormant under layers of routine. It is as if he touched a secret chord inside her, a resonant frequency that no one else knew existed. One of the most subtle and, at the same time, most devastating questions for the ego is, what do you hide even from yourself? This is not just a provocation, it is a dive into deep waters. It forces the woman to look at the shadows, at the desires and thoughts she tries to hide even from her own moral conscience. And if you keep your gaze calm, without judgment, welcoming her shadow, something magical happens. She feels free. And when a woman feels free in your presence, free to be imperfect, she begins to open up in a way she would never open up with another man who demands perfection. There is also the question that activates her seduction instinct, the one that awakens the playful, mysterious, and provocative side, the inner femme fatale. Ask, do you like it more when someone understands you or when someone challenges you? This simple binary choice reveals much more about her personality than it seems. Some will smile ironically, preferring the challenge. Others will sigh, preferring understanding. But all will think. You create an internal dilemma, and this dilemma generates tension. And sexual tension is the fuel of desire. The right questions not only reveal information, they build a climate, an erotic tension. Each word spoken is like a musical note, and the silence between the phrases is the beat that gives rhythm to the melody of seduction. The secret is to alternate between curiosity and mystery, between emotional intensity and playful lightness. It is this oscillation that keeps the game alive and unpredictable. When she starts to relax and speak naturally, thinking she understood the game, it is time to change the tone and destabilize again. An unexpected question, spoken with a calm voice, can turn the game. When was the last time someone looked at you and made you feel truly seen? This phrase touches the heart of every woman because deep down, in a world of social networks and appearances, all miss being seen beyond appearance, the body, the social role they play. And when she feels that you perceive this lack, you become the exception to the rule. And all female desire is born from the exception, from the man who is not like all the others. Each of these questions has an ancestral power, almost primitive, the power to make the other remember themselves. The common man, the nice guy or the standard bad boy, tries to convince a woman that he is interesting. The man who masters the game makes her feel interesting in his presence. This is the fundamental difference between seeking needy validation and offering masculine presence. There is a moment in every deep conversation when the air changes, a perceptible turning of the key. It is when she starts looking at you differently, with a slower shine, a silent curiosity, analyzing your lips while you speak. She is not just listening to what you say, she is feeling the vibration of who you are. And this only happens when your questions are not artificial, but born of a genuine desire to understand her complexity. But there is also a more provocative and dangerous side to this game, that of direct, sensual curiosity. When you ask with a half smile, in an almost inaudible tone, what is the type of touch that makes you forget the world? It doesn't matter if she answers verbally or gets embarrassed. The simple question has already lit up her tactile imagination. She begins to imagine the answer, to feel past touches, and her body reacts physiologically to the image created in her own mind. It is an invisible dance between words and physical sensations. And here is the most dangerous secret of the neurobiology of passion.
The more you awaken the mind, the more the body follows. Lasting physical attraction is a consequence of prior emotional and intellectual stimulation. The woman feels desire when the man makes her unconscious vibrate. And the right questions are the password to enter this operating system. Therefore, the true seducer is not the one who talks a lot, filling the space with noise, but the one who awakens enough to let the rest happen alone in her mind. He understands that attraction is an alchemical process where each word is an ingredient, each silence is a flame, and each look is a catalytic spark. Questions are the initial fire, but what keeps them burning is the way you hear the answer. Listening is an act of power and dominance. When she realizes that you pay attention to the details, to the pauses in her speech, to the nervous gestures of her hands, she feels that you are present in body and soul. And presence is the greatest aphrodisiac that exists in a distracted world. This is how a man enters a woman's soul, not forcing the entry, but leading her to open the door. Not imposing, but inviting. Not trying to conquer like a general, but awakening what already exists inside her like a wizard. The right questions do not create desire out of nothing. They reveal it, lift the veil. The power of questions lies not only in asking them, but in the reverent silence that comes after. It is in that instant of silence that her mind works alone, rebuilding memories, projecting future sensations onto you, reliving what was forgotten. This is the fertile ground where desire is born, in the interval between what was said and what can still be said. And it is there that the man who understands the feminine inhabits, on the threshold between the word and the mystery. When she answers something intimate and you just smile, keeping your gaze fixed, without correcting her, without trying to seem smarter or give a logical solution, she feels something rare, the sensation of really being heard. This is magnetic. Women do not go crazy for perfect men, but for men who make them feel seen, understood, awakened from the sleep of banality. Beauty may attract the eyes initially, but it is presence that holds the soul in the long term. And to finish, there is a final question, the cherry on the cake, the question that seals the enchantment, the one that makes her think of you even when she tries to forget. What do you still want to live, but feel that time is passing too fast? This question touches the female soul deeply because it speaks of something universal, finitude and urgency. The fear of losing the intensity of life and becoming just a spectator. When you awaken this feeling of carpe diem, you are no longer just a man. You become a symbol of life. She associates you with the desire to live intensely. And this is what really drives her crazy, because you come to represent something that transcends the physical. You represent adventure. The true mastery of the art of asking is not rational. It is intuitive. It is feeling the moment. It is being attentive to what her words do not say, but the body reveals when crossing legs or touching hair. It is noticing when her gaze changes focus, when the tone of voice warns that she is emotional, when breathing slows down. All this is language. All this is a response. And when you start to perceive these subtleties, you discover that verbal conversation is only the surface of a much deeper and richer ocean. A woman falls in love in the detail, in the gesture that seems distracted but carries intention, in the question that seems casual but touches the collective unconscious. When she feels that there is something in you that understands her without needing to explain with subtitles, she loses herself in you. And loving, deep down, is this: losing oneself to find oneself. The right questions are not a cold manipulation technique, but a warm bridge. A bridge between two universes that rarely meet for real. When a man looks at a woman and asks something no one has ever asked, he makes her feel unique in the world. And when she feels unique, you become unforgettable. That is why so many men go unnoticed, become invisible, because they live on the shallow surface. They talk about the weather, about traffic, about safe banalities. But the man who dives, who asks what really matters, who makes her listen to herself while she speaks, creates a bond that goes beyond Cartesian logic. He awakens something she didn't even know existed. In the end, it's not about having an instruction manual, but about presence and courage. The right questions arise naturally when there is genuine interest in the human being in front of you. When you really want to understand, not just seduce to inflate the ego. And the more you understand, the more she feels. It is an invisible and virtuous cycle. Curiosity generates connection. Connection generates desire. Desire generates memory.
And memory is what makes her think of you when the world falls silent and she is lying in bed. The madness that these questions awaken is not hysteria nor fleeting teenage passion. It is the type of enchantment that is born from the soul, something almost spiritual. It is the fascination for someone who makes time stop, who makes her leave the role of common woman, tired of routine, and puts her back on the throne of the feminine, that place where she feels she can be, feel, and exist without social masks. A man like this is not only desired, he is feared in a good sense, because she knows she will never find another equal if she loses him. You become the echo she hears when she lies down, the intrusive thought that insists on returning when she tries to move on with life. And all this started with something simple, almost banal, a question. So before spending hours thinking about what you are going to say to conquer a woman, think about what you are going to ask to know her, because the right question asked at the right moment is like an irrevocable spell, and, after it is cast,
nothing goes back to being as before. There is a point where seduction becomes almost spiritual, transcendent, when the conversation ceases to be an exchange of words and becomes an exchange of energy, when what matters is no longer what is said, but what is felt, vibrating in the air between one phrase and another. And it is at this point that common men get lost, because they try to impress rationally when they should only vibrate emotionally. The woman feels this difference on her skin. She perceives when a man speaks to fill the awkward silence, and when he speaks because the silence has become too alive, too intense. The man who masters the power of questions does not seek answers for an inquiry. He awakens dormant worlds. Every woman carries within herself entire universes that no one has ever visited. Forgotten memories, dormant desires, old wounds that still pulsate. When you ask the right question, you are not just provoking a dialogue, you are opening a door to this universe. And by crossing this door, something in you also transforms. One of the most subtle and dangerous questions is, do you believe you have ever been truly loved? Few have the courage to ask this question, and even fewer are ready to hear the real answer, because it comes loaded with heavy stories, long silences, looks lost on the horizon. Maybe she says yes, maybe she hesitates and stammers, but what matters is the storm that happens inside. She revisits moments, memories, touches, and in the middle of this emotional whirlwind, your face mixes with the ghosts of her past, rewriting history. The emotion she relives anchors itself in you, and this is what creates the link, the transferred emotional memory. Another question that penetrates deep into romantic mysticism is, do you believe that two people can recognize each other even before they know each other? This is a question that touches the unconscious, awakens the instinct of destiny, latent spirituality. Even if she doesn't know how to answer rationally, the question plants an idea, a seed of destiny. And ideas are dangerous because they keep growing in silence like roots. You become the symbol of this mysterious sensation. The face she associates with destiny, with chance, with what cannot be explained by cold logic. Women do not fall in love only with men of flesh and bone. They fall in love with the sensations that these men awaken in them. That is why each question must be designed as a sensory experience. The way you look, the deep tone of voice, the cadenced rhythm of speech, everything is part of the subtle hypnosis of connection. A man who speaks slowly, with clear intention, who lets words breathe in the air, creates an irresistible magnetic field. She leans in, wants to hear more, and when she wants to hear more, she is already caught in the web. There are also questions that touch the body without touching the skin. If I looked at you now as if time stopped, what would you do? This is the direct bridge between the emotional and the physical. It is the explicit invitation without being vulgar. She feels the weight of imagination, and the body reacts before she even realizes it. Because desire begins in the mind, and the right words are like invisible fingers running through what is prohibited. But the true power lies in knowing when to stop, when to retreat, and let the silence speak for you. It is in that instant of absence that she feels your presence stronger than ever, that the void between phrases turns into pure sexual tension. And that is where fascination lives. The woman goes crazy not when she has all the answers delivered on a platter, but when she feels that there is still something to discover, a mystery to solve. The wise man understands that each question is a seed, and that time, mystery, and strategic distance are the water that makes it bloom. When you plant something in her mind with this precision, you don't need to run after her desperately, because her thought will run to you inevitably. Later, perhaps days later, she catches herself remembering the conversation in the middle of a shower, the questions, the pauses, your look, and will feel something inexplicable, a tightness in the chest, a shiver that does not come from physical memories, but from something deeper, from the energetic recognition of the soul. And that is where the game ends, or rather, really begins, when you no longer need to be physically present to continue present in her mind. And deep down, that is what drives any woman crazy. The man who does not try to conquer her like an object, but reveal her like a sacred mystery. The man who makes her feel as if the universe had stopped for an instant just to hear her breathe. Who makes her remember that she is mystery, fire, strength, and vulnerability at the same time. A man who understands the power of questions understands the power of silence. And whoever masters silence masters desire, because silence is the mirror of the soul, and in the right mirror, she sees herself reflected in you and falls in love with what she sees. So, when she looks at you with that slow shine, with that smile that mixes fear of surrendering and curiosity to go further, understand one thing. You did not conquer a woman. You awakened a force of nature. And forces like that are not controlled, only lived intensely.